June 28, 2024 special council meeting for the town of St. Paul. We'll make a call to order. Roll call, please.
David Ryan.
Here.
Ken Swanner.
Here.
Justin Graham.
Here.
JT Trevino.
Here.
Robert Simmons.
Here.
Madam Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Quorum is established. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. You'll see the minutes in front of you for the last council meeting. If you want to take a look at those.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Moving down to agenda items 3.1 is discuss, consider an act on defining the ordinance 270-24-05-13 for clarity prior to filling the filling the newly created position of town administrator. So this is something that I put on here. I spoke with Robert about it. We spoke with the attorney this morning about it. If you take a look at that ordinance and you read carefully through it, so according to state law, we have to have a town secretary, period. And so because of that, it was originally, from what I understand, explained that we were going to make this position a public admin / town secretary.
Yeah, dual role.
Dual role.
And it's a role. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Mayor.
No,
but
you're fine.
We did establish that with Mr. Dillard today. It's the role. It's not a position that we have to fill individually and pay for individually. It is a role that can be assigned to people who work for the town.
Like somebody could be a municipal clerk in addition to.
Correct. Yeah, he did say that council members cannot fill that role. Okay, I understand, because it's, I guess, a bridge too far. That's fine, but it is a role. I'm sorry to take away your thunder.
It is kind of a role. So basically, we have the new hire, Alex, that works back there. So we could have her do agenda, even though a new hire in the public admin would be the one that signs off on it.
Yeah.
So it is that dual role in that function where he would still sign off, he or she would still sign off as a public admin / town secretary. It was just unclear in the ordinance that it wasn't established that we were kind of not doing away with it. And what brought it up to me is if you look down kind of towards the bottom, and let's see.
Is there another copy of those? Because I don't have.
Didn't I put one in yours?
Here.
No.
Yeah.
Try that one.
Thank you.
There you go. Sorry about that. So if you look down at item D, down at the bottom, you'll see it says with town council approval, the public admin can hire, supervise, and when necessary for the good of the town, terminate subordinate employees, except for town secretary, town attorney, town auditor, town judge, town prosecutor. When I saw the town secretary there set aside separately, it kind of took away from that dual role in that ordinance, and kind of made it sound like, well, we're gonna have the public admin as well as the town secretary. It's kind of, it makes it unclear.
Yeah.
So while we were talking with Dillard, the town attorney, this morning about it, he basically explained that yes, we could do some clarification on this and amend it just for that reason, so that even if we replace the guy now and we share this as a dual role, if he quit, let's say, or retired, and somebody in the future after we're gone reapplies this position, that ordinance would still be in play, and it wouldn't be confusing to the next town admin. He would would know, his responsibilities are signing off on minutes, making sure that's done, do your reporting, all the rest of the stuff that the town secretary currently does. Is that explain it pretty well, Robert?
Yeah, I think that we just need to make sure that the wording, and, you know, I've told the mayor that I don't mind helping with the wording on that, and then, of course, we can get it verified by our attorney. But the other item, I don't know if you're gonna bring it up, was I think it was in here somewhere about being able to.
Oh, it's item B.
Authorize, the authority to advise. They certainly have the authority to advise, we just need to clean up the item B. It's a little,
The 10 law ratings,
Yeah.
authority to advise on agenda items and take part in town council
yeah,
discussion.
and they should, but we need to clean up how that works, because just
But you're
like,
not part of the.
just like citizens, they need to be asked whenever they're.
But yeah, and if you watch some videos of, let's say Parker or Wiley or one of those where they have a city manager, usually city manager might be sitting over to the side. They could be sitting right here as well, but if you're asking for data from that city manager, they give you the facts and not a discussion. And that way, it's up to council to decide what items they want to address.
We certainly can ask their opinion on matters, but it needs to be clear that the council is requesting an opinion.
So there were just a few of those clarifications. When we talked to Dillard this morning about it, he basically just explained that this was something they wrote for Josephine, I believe.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of brought over to apply here as well, since we're a little bit different than a Josephine and we don't have these positions that Josephine does match set. It would just make sense for us to clarify this and then bring it back up for an amendment, next available time we can get the wording done.
So 270-24-05-13, that's the one we passed on May 13, 2024?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we passed it, so are we going to remove it or just amend it?
We would amend, so we'd go through and amend just the items that we just talked about, so item B and item D.
Yeah, so in item D, wasn't the mayor in charge of the rest of the town staff of hiring, firing?
No.
That was never, okay.
Or we'll hire town council?
So like as of now, or I guess as of before this.
It used to be
was-
that the town secretary had a term concurrent with the mayor's term.
Correct.
We're going
and
to
They basically
remind-
served the privileges of the mayor, for council, but that's no longer the case.
Yeah, and that's okay, I think that's what we've discussed with DC Consultants is the way to move forward with that. I'm not worried about that personally. I think that with D, we just need to be more clear. It does say with town council approval, so that's good. I don't think that needs to change. I just think that we need to clarify that the town secretary is more of a role that is assigned to the admin at this point, the administrator at this point.
I mean, I think that's clearly easily done with the dual role.
Yeah, the mayor has a point whenever you call it out there as someone who could be hired or removed, it gets confusing.
Yeah,
So
and I wanted it to be clear that the new public admin was a town secretary as well on one aspect. The other thing, I didn't want it specified separately about firing a town secretary, just because we don't want a new individual coming in with that dual role, and then, let's say, 2 months in, he goes, hey, I wanna hire a town secretary. Town secretary is the next highest position next to his.
Right.
So when you're looking at a pay scale, all of a sudden, we're limiting what we can hire.
I guess what I've been trying to convey is I don't think we should preclude that from being able to be done. It's just that it shouldn't have to be done.
No, I agree. I'm just saying we don't have to specifically mention that in here, necessarily.
We do need to align with the state code in the sense that the town secretary is
A position.
is a what's the term? An official of the town.
That's correct.
So we've got to make sure that's still in there. And again, I can help with that. I don't mind trying to work on the wording for that.
Okay? And
I don't mind B for now, we can communicate verbally to the new town administrator our expectation of him or her in meetings, and have ongoing discussions if we feel to step it out or something like that, and then we can change this in the future.
I would prefer changing B to get rid of the word authority. I don't think that that needs to be there. The authority has too much,
You can put ability.
it's too strong, yeah. It has the, yes. I just would like to, I'd like to propose to council a change. Now, if we don't want to accept that change, that's fine, I'll go back to the drawing board, but there's on B and D, there's some wording I think that needs to be cleaned up, just to make sure that we're clear on this. That's why the mayor and I wanted to have this on the agenda to talk about.
So what's the overall goal of hiring a town administrator versus another town secretary?
The biggest problem with hiring a town secretary was that wasn't gonna attract the type of candidate that I think we were looking for at the time. We wanted to make sure that the role was broader than just the town secretary. There's connotations that come with the term. I think when I was looking this up, it goes back to the 1870s when the term was, and it meant something different than it does now. Certainly the Secretary of State still has a lot of power, but there's still concerns around that. So town administrator over the last, 3 decades or so has become more prominent, and it's easier to attract candidates with that title. And I think that's really what drove
We were
our-
talking candidates that had masters in public administration, and so that the term administrator
Yeah.
kind of lined up with
Yeah.
going after a much higher caliber
Right.
candidate.
And other towns are doing this kind of thing too. So. Not that they're right or wrong, it's just. you
Moving
gotta-
to a town administrator role?
Yeah. Well, I don't even say it's moving to, it's just really acknowledging that it's broader than just what we might consider. Plus, the secretary in commercial world most secretaries in commercial world are called admins now, or administrators. So it's really kind of trying to align with the times on verbiage.
Yeah, I mean, decades ago, small towns didn't have the regulations, the codes, the issues that we have today. So just going after a little higher caliber. Move some anti.
Yeah, the only thing that Dillard didn't mention is the secretary role mentioned in state law. State laws are your basics, ordinances kind of take over from there to shore it up. So he just kept saying, no matter what, we have to have a town secretary role, however you want to put it. I think that language could be added to this. It could be the dual role we're going to talk about later this evening. That's just a wording issue. It's still going to be a public admin. If anything, public admin / town secretary, so that whoever they hire in the future knows they have a dual role.
Right.
So with the proposed amendments to section B as in Bravo and D as in Delta, is that going to hinder the potential onboarding of staff until that's amended?
Certainly we know. I
No,
think we
sure.
can make it work, and we'll certainly discuss that with anybody who's, in competition for that role. And I don't have anything proposed yet. This is just bringing it to y'all's attention that we think we should, address these items.
Is just the word authority, is that what you want to change?
That's the main thing. It's too strong. In my opinion, it's too strong.
Okay. Watering
Some
down
of the
the
word, yeah.
And then the other part was in the D, the word exclusively mentioning town secretary as a separate position. I think by putting it in with the public admin / town secretary,
Right.
you could remove it there to make it clear that you can't fire certain people, but at the same time, our ordinance would define his role or her role as a public admin / town secretary, which meets state guidelines.
But if we leave that in there in D, and we ultimately someday have a true secretary I'm okay leaving that in there.
I wanted to label it as more of a role. I don't know if, I want to make sure I'm conveying myself right. It's, a lot of times when you take positions, especially the more higher up in an organization you go, you end up wearing multiple hats. So I don't know how many committees I'm involved in my current job, where I'm either the head or a member of some committee that approves software licensing and, engineering approval, all that kind of stuff. But that's just a role I take. We don't hire a separate person for that job. If we did, the company would go bankrupt. You have your main job that you're got to do, and then you have some roles that you take on, and that's what we need to clarify here, is that the town secretary is a role that is required by the state, and it's a role that we need to make sure that we have, but it's not necessarily an individual person separate from the other employees.
So in the
You don't have to, but basically what I'm trying to say is, you don't have to have a full-time town secretary.
Correct.
They can do other roles.
We had one candidate that was wanting to also be.
Marshal.
Marshal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have a extra role and.
Right.
and title.
Yeah.
So in the rec we put out, did we say that it would be a dual role?
The rec we put out did show that it was a dual
Okay.
role. All the screening process that happened was for it being a dual role.
Okay.
And this is
Right.
contingent employment, though.
This just-
So this has
Really?
to, no, because this ordinance revolves around the employment of that new position.
It allows for us to hire a town admin, and we just need to make sure we're clear that they're.
How long would it take us to make an amendment, an amended version?
Well, part of the reason we want to put it on here is to get y'all prepped for what's coming, and then we can hopefully have that in the next, what is it, July 8th?
July 8th is the next meeting. I mean, we could do it on July 8th and have it ready to go by then. Dillard said he understands, because like I said, he just copied this from Josephine and kind of moved it over. And he agreed that all these things could easily be done. He doesn't mind working on the rewording of it at all. So we can, I think we could probably have that by the July 8th.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, I'm out of town on the 8th, so can't really have I guess a regular meeting, you can still have a quorum.
That's correct.
Just can't have a special meeting.
Right.
Unless we get.
Hey, so do you remember when, you were looking at some research for, or can you telecommute for?
No, not easily. It would have to be two-way, always on.
Video.
Yeah, I couldn't leave the screen, I had to be visible to y'all, and, I mean, it was like a big hassle.
Okay.
I mean, you can do it in like observe. I said you can't do it in observe.
Okay.
To be there in an official capacity voting and stuff like that.
Just no-
You still have to have a quorum here, you know, and it was just really.
I think, can't we, if we updated the wording, Dillard approved it, it's just a regular quorum that brings this in, right?
Yeah.
For as far as an update, we don't
Yes.
have to have a super majority or anything.
Okay.
So, discussion, any other? We have a motion?
Anything else that you guys think that we should know?
I mean, this is really more.
There's really not a motion to make.
No, it's really more informative.
As long as it's, do we need to make a motion in order to clarify? To amend the?
I think this was just discussion on the.
Yeah,
first night.
it's mainly just.
Okay.
Nothing to take action on.
Okay. So, I'm just questioning that, because
Yeah.
if we write something, are we taking an action?
No, we haven't done anything yet, so
Okay.
on the 8th, we'll
Okay.
hopefully have something on the 8th, we can actually move forward.
Okay, so we'll move on to item 3-2, which is to discuss, consider act to accept the letter of resignation from the town secretary for the effective date of June 30, 2024. You have a copy before you. It's just a formality more than any.
So I guess like what are the exit procedures? So if it's on a Sunday, like is there anything we need to do today? Like she's still gonna have access on Saturday and Sunday, or what's the deal with that?
No, well, we haven't really, that's something that we'll discuss a little bit more, or we can't even bring that here. So as far as talking to the town attorney, I asked him about that, just how transition, what do we do about town secretary, this and that and the other. So it doesn't really affect anything since we're not open business hours Saturday and Sunday. So it doesn't really affect anything there. After the last meeting tonight, we've already moved, all the financial stuff has already been, her name has been removed, I think, from this point. So it's mine and the pro tem that's carrying that until we bring on that public admin, and then his name will be added. So that part's taken care of. The IT portion is already being, I guess, officially switched over to me so that I'm allowed to make those orders if we need a new computer or whatever the case is. So that, most of the paperwork that all of the paperwork has already been switched over. So once we get a new public admin hire, it'll be real simple to add his name to that list, and we don't have to remove anyone past that. So to answer your question, it doesn't have any bearing on the cost factor. Her health insurance is good through Sunday, no matter what, Sunday midnight. So that's not a bearing on any of that. Since we're not open Saturday, Sunday, it doesn't affect pay, anything of that sort. So it's actually, we've worked this week to make sure everything gets switched over. So We have the new key policy that was installed, back, about almost 2 months ago. So I'll get the key back. I'm gonna take that same key, give it over here to our pro tem. We'll get him set up so that he has access to come in. He'll be dual signing checks with me for payments, bills, things of that sort, so that we don't lose that, tracking ability, for the funds, things of that sort. So I think everything is pretty clear and pretty smooth at this point.
So you're gonna be here on Sunday to take keys, or?
Tonight, I'll take care of that. With,
So today?
right, today, yes.
So do we wanna change this to today, since it's officially gonna be done today?
Well, the only thing that's officially being done today is taking her, the key and, I'll call Sentinel and get, if we need to, a new alarm code for David, so that he has a key, he has the alarm code to kill this place so he can come in and sign checks. She will not have access after this evening's meeting. She won't have a code for the alarm, she won't have a key to get in the building. If you remember, we rekeyed it and we keep track of all keys.
We have a meeting tonight?
It's 6:30, yes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So,
And the town email is, do you have access to that on your phone? Okay, so the town email, who has access to that after today?
It is on my desktop in there, it is on Alex's desktop in there.
So there's at least somebody that is.
We are monitoring that as well. Don't get it on our phones, but, we'll get it up here. My plan to this point is go back kind of, since we don't have a whole lot on the, items to take care of right now outside of a few minor things, is Alex will be here at 9 every morning. I'll let her in. I'll be here with her 9 to 1. We'll shut the doors at posted times unless there's some reason I need to be here longer. She leaves at 1, and so the doors will remain open, as scheduled.
So-
For the public.
Not the second door.
That's correct.
Okay, just-
As always.
I just want to make sure we're clear on which doors are being locked, because we've already had a citizen
I talked with.
express quite a bit of concern over a lot.
Yeah. No, it's gonna operate as usual. Nothing's gonna change for the public's, perspective. Everything is gonna function as it always has.
I mean, I appreciate the letter. It is interesting that it's picked on a Sunday, because it does make it.
It's just
kinda
through the end
weird.
of the month, it was just for
Yeah.
tidying up for purposes. I didn't really dive into that too much.
Is it okay if we make it today? Just to make
I
it.
just don't, like I said, I've already made the insurance cut off on the 30th, all that kind of stuff, I've already done that. So I don't know that that makes any difference, but
it makes no
It-
difference.
it's not gonna
There's no
change
difference.
There's no difference if there's no access. I mean,
the
Will
only thing I
Sentinel
think.
take it, even though it says on the 30th, and will they make any changes, IT make any change? If it's no difference, we should probably just take care of it today.
And yeah, probably all the actions will be done today anyway. It sounds like that's fine. Right?
Everything outside of the insurance portion should be taken care of. Once she gives the cell phone a key, and I change the alarm code for David, everything else should be taken care of. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
As far as that goes.
It does draw some concern, I think, because I hear what Justin says, and I correlate with what he says as well with Mr. Simmons. If it's no difference, why don't we just make it to the 28th, or it's the work week, it's the end of the work week.
Okay.
Just makes it easier, so we can start the process, because if we have to terminate anything from an electronic perspective, it's gonna be hard to do something on a Sunday versus a Friday.
There's absolutely nothing that's gonna be done in the next 2 days, whether it's a Friday afternoon, evening,
I don't
or a
have
Saturday
any
or a
ability to
Sunday.
do anything electronic.
But
That's why we should have had a process for this, but, I mean,
Again, those bringing up policies and things.
So
like
well,
that, they're
we
all-
can we can make
I've
motions.
resigned from, I've resigned from places before, and they said, well, I mean, it didn't really fall on our situation, so we're gonna give you an extra week. And I got an extra week pay. I mean, so, in the state of Texas, you can resign when you wanna resign, if it doesn't align with the
We're
organization.
closed on Sunday
it's-
technically, so why on a Sunday?
I mean,
Yeah.
Again, it was just the simplicity of it's at the end of a pay period, it's at the end of the month, there's no real strategy behind it, it's just even when.
Well, she submitted it, so our role is to either accept it, deny it.
You can accept the
You can't
contingent.
deny it.
Or ask her.
You can't really deny it, so.
It's just what it is. I'm not too worried about it. It sounds like the insurance is the only thing that might lapse for 2 days and.
No, I think insurance is covered all the way through.
Well, you got Cobra, right? Or some
Well,
kind of.
it's
form of
covered through the
Cobra?
end of the month regardless,
Yeah.
if you're,
Yeah,
if you
okay.
terminate in the middle of the month,
Well,
or
there you go.
whatever.
So,
If you terminate.
Who
in-
processes payroll?
Ross.
Okay.
So I've already gotten my time sheet
Do we have a
ready,
motion to
when I
accept the
leave this
contingent
evening,
today?
I can feel much on
I'll
that.
have him sign it, and he'll ship
I
it
don't
off.
get it. What's the deal?
What's it, I mean, you wanna, are you gonna be here for 2 days to watch over the place?
It sounds like we have it covered.
Well, the bottom line
We shouldn't
on
have
watching
to. We
over,
should just make
the
it over
physical
to-
address part of this is only gonna be, there's only 3 keys to this building that have been
I'm
designated.
just looking out for the best interest of the town, right? So I'm here to play devil's advocacy, right? So it's just questioning what, doesn't matter who it is.
I'm not
doesn't
coming
matter-
back.
Too far for her to
I'm
drive
not coming-
anyway, she's not
I'm not
coming.
coming back.
Well, again, it's,
I'm
for
gonna
all
be
intents and
somewhere else.
purposes, I wouldn't care if it was you.
So tell you what,
or
just
me.
make whatever your motion you want so that we can get to a decision and go on, because this is a non-issue to me.
I make the motion that we accept the with contingent for the June 28th, 2024 effective at the end of the business day today.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All nay?
Nay.
Hang on,
It's
hang
fine.
on.
It's fine for us to, she's doing the 30th. The
Yeah.
insurance goes through the 30th.
The insurance
Let's
will go
just
through the during-
Let's just
during-
accept.
So are you gonna make a motion to accept this?
I
as submitted?
motion, yeah, we accept this as is.
All right. I'll second.
Doesn't he have to tiebreak?
I mean, again, is that all I do is do a tiebreaker at this point? Because, I mean.
Oh, yeah,
or
that's
do
true.
I-
You do a tiebreaker.
Yeah, or do I get to
My bad.
discuss?
I'm sorry.
No, we're out of order. We
jumped-
stand
jumped
out of
over
order.
there, moving
We
to-
stand out of order.
Revoke that.
Yeah, we stand out of order. It's still on the table, the first motion.
I'm sorry?
The first motion is still on the table because you are the tiebreaker, sorry.
I'm sorry, so
Okay.
is,
No, supermajority today.
so is discussion over?
Special meeting, isn't it?
It is a special meeting.
But that's only for taxes.
That's-
It's only for taxes.
No.
Everything else is regular. Anything that affects the budget or taxes is supermajority.
The motion is
supermajority to make a quorum,
accept your
The
resignation.
actions are still normal.
As effective today, the 28th, after the last meeting, I guess, at 6:30, whatever. Is that correct?
Protection.
JT, is that correct on your motion?
Yes,
28th, end of today.
yes.
End of today?
Close of
which-
business is what I use, so whatever time you choose to.
Are you gonna get specific with the time,
No, it's
8:30,
after
any of
this
that,
meeting's
after
over.
the last
After the
meeting?
last meeting.
After the last meeting.
Okay, does that make sense? Okay, it's not gonna affect anything, right, as far as insurance,
If you're not gonna come back anyways.
that's fine.
Give everybody a rhyme or reason.
Okay.
So, I'd like to get some clarification. So, for a special meeting, what is?
You have
what
to
is
have a
our-
supermajority for the special meeting, but the actions taken in there are still normal voting, except for budget and taxes.
That's negative. And one other thing, which is on this as well.
Hmm?
The reason we had to have 4. The super-
Oh, for
The
resignation?
22-077.
For executive sessions. Is that what you're talking about?
No, yeah, for a vote of any kind, it
Yeah.
has to be 4 or 5
This
positions.
is a special council meeting. It was listed as such.
That's
It's not-
correct.
It's not a normal meeting.
But we're only accepting the resignation, we're not going into the other
It's
item.
an
We're-
agenda item
We're not
on-
on item 3.3 yet.
Yeah, we're on item.
Right, we're not there yet.
Yeah, so.
But
item
that's the
three-
reason we have 4.
So agenda items in a special meeting do not require a supermajority.
No.
No,
Except for agenda, I'm sorry, except for budget
Budget.
and tax.
Okay. But it's required to make the quorum.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, with the reasoning being that if you're having a special meeting,
Okay.
you make sure you have everybody, you get more than normal people there.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
so are you just waiting on my vote?
Yeah, you're the tiebreaker.
I mean, it's not gonna matter. Just put it in effective for today. I vote yay.
Okay.
There you go, it's not gonna matter.
Okay, so
So are we changing?
Hang on, so
She's making
You're-
notes that somebody else is gonna have to figure out in
Yeah.
2 minutes.
That's
So
right.
let's let her have whatever time she
Okay.
wants.
Yeah.
Take your time.
So your nay, your
Yes.
yea, make it effective today.
Sure.
How Brian didn't even need
It did.
to. It did.
Someone's calling.
Yes.
Is it decent?
I couldn't tell you. Never made it in that pot before.
All right.
All right, we take a recess for a second.
Uh,
Signs and doorways.
Sorry. Back to our scheduled meeting here. Regular agenda items are concluded at this time. We're gonna move into a closed session meeting to discuss 3-3A, B, and C, which are the seat number 1 council spots and applications, as far as planning and zoning applications, and the 1 full-time seat, 1 reserve seat on P and Z. And then from the last meeting, we're gonna go into executive session on that 22.077 regarding the town secretary, lack of confidence from the last meeting. So at this time, meeting is closed.
In lieu of the last item, I move that we strike that from the agenda.
Which one? 3-3?
3.3C,
I second that motion.
To remove it,
move it from the agenda.
okay?
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Okay, at this time, we're gonna go into executive session to deliberate the council seat position in regular session. Reconvene into the public hearing, discuss, consider an act 3.4, the appointment of the council seat 1 for the town of St. Paul. Further discussions, do we have a motion?
No, I mean, we should say that we considered all the forms that were submitted to us and read through them thoroughly and discussed each candidate and what they brought to the table. And it's really inspiring to have several candidates that were really strong, so.
Yeah, we appreciate the hard work and providing answers to a significant amount of questions.
Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And I'm recusing myself from voting due to campaign donations.
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Graham.
So, do we have a motion for,
I would
seat
like to
1?
make, I would like to make a motion that we, appoint Larry Lawrence Nell for seat 1.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second that motion.
Okay, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Quitter.
That Judge Beam is second.
Okay, so we have chose Larry Nell for council seat 1. I will be in contact with him and all the other candidates as well.
And that means an email address, if assuming he accepts it.
Correct.
You get an email address. get
Attached to him.
Get his training and all of that.
Okay,
So will that mean he will be here for the July meeting?
yes, I will try to get him up where we can swear him in on July 8th. As
We'll
far
do
as-
that before the meeting.
So that'll be the first meeting agenda item so that he can take his seat and participate in the meeting? That's
Swear
correct?
him in beforehand,
Okay.
and then,
All in agreement that that's the right way?
Yes.
Okay, good.
so, do I wanna take this opportunity to go ahead and, create an SOP around this? Would you like some assistance around that?
I'm sorry, say again?
Procedural, like an SOP, just so we have something documented, so we're not trying.
For new members,
For
yeah.
new members, so we're not
Yeah.
always doing this off the cusp.
Right. Especially around the fact that that needs to happen early in the meeting, not at the end.
It needs to be after, it needs to be.
If you wanna start-
3.1.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you wanna start, the only questions I have as far as swearing in at the beginning, they need, if there's a packet of information they're supposed to have and they're not up front, kinda makes it a little bit on the difficult side.
It does.
I think what you could do because swearing in could take place, if I'm not mistaken, in the office early on at noon for a 7 o'clock meeting even, they're sworn in. So if we were gonna do a policy, you know, put them in place at that meeting, swear them in by
Yeah, it doesn't.
2 o'clock,
there's-
so they get a packet and be up and
There's
running.
nothing wrong with them getting the packet in advance, unless have already expressed that they're not gonna accept it, because they do need to come in and they can do all the paperwork portion of it. I personally believe that the swearing in, you know, saying you're gonna uphold the state and federal constitution, I think that needs to happen in a public meeting, but all the paperwork stuff, I agree, could be done in advance, and that way they can see any paperwork that we have in advance.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, cause
That's-
that's.
I just want them up to speed if we're gonna bring them in.
Record.
Will you reach out to him possibly, you know, make sure that he can be here for the July meeting?
Yes, that would be number one.
You wanna,
I will not be.
Ireland, Scotland. So. Okay, so,
Charles, I'd like to make a motion that we strike in 3.5.
3.5 has
I
been.
second that.
Yes, a second.
Well,
he seconded.
Oh, sorry.
Justin
second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, that concludes motion to adjourn.
I'll motion we adjourn.
I second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Friday, June 28, 2024, Town of St. Paul, special meeting, call to order. The roll call, please.
David Drive,
Here.
Nick Swan.
Here.
Justin Graham.
Here.
JT Trevino,
Here.
Robert Smith.
Here?
Do we have a quorum? We do. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. On our regular agenda items, this meeting was called for an introduction and an interview to the town council by Scott Albert, our applicant, a prospective candidate for the town administrator position created this year. So at this time, I would like to introduce Scott Albert. There's a couple of us talked to him on the phone. The two that weren't there, this gives you an opportunity to listen, ask a few questions, and see exactly what it is that he can offer our town. We had a pretty good interview, for a lengthy interview as far as that goes. Y'all, I think everybody's seen the applicant package or read about Scott, is that correct? Okay, and so at this time, Scott, I'll have you address the council and see if they have any questions for you.
We'll just kind of give you an overview of your background and
Okay.
why you're interested in the
Okay.
position.
Well, if you don't mind, I'll stand.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for this opportunity. I met with the sub-search committee, I think it was roughly 2 weeks ago, and that interview went really well. This is a great opportunity for me because, one, it brings me back to my home, Collin County. I know I've been away from home now since 2008, an opportunity to actually go to my house, be there, get up, drive 15, 20 minutes down the road, be at St. Paul, continue my career. It's just an opportunity I can't pass up. It's not a career that I'm looking to continue chasing, going up the ladder. This is just a perfect fit for me professionally and personally, and that's why I applied for the job. You know, I feel like, you know, my skill sets along with my personal background fits well with St. Paul. Obviously, you're probably familiar with the fact that I spent 4 or 5 years in Fairview as their first town administrator, so I think that fits well as far as trying to be your first town administrator here in St. Paul as well. I started my career in, actually with the city of Plano. Let me back up a little bit. Start with my education. So, my undergrad originally was in economics and finance at the University of Texas at Dallas. And in my last semester, my senior year, I had one elective class I needed to take, and I decided to take a class called Practicing Texas Politics. In my mind, I thought, what an easy, get it, move on. And we had a guest speaker come to that particular class, Tom Muhlenbeck, who's the city manager of Plano. And that really changed my perspective as far as what I wanted to do for a career. Tom spoke very highly of a career in local government, city management. I thought, what a great career we can go and have an impact on a lot of individual lives, and hopefully for the better. That has always been my drive. Previously, I always thought economics and finance, I'd go into the finance world and make a ton of money, but it was just the way that Tom spoke about a career that really struck a chord with me, that I wanted to make a difference in local government, and it's always been like that. So I went home and I told my wife I wanted to stay on another year at the University of Texas at Dallas and get my bachelor's in public administration. Eventually I got my master's in public affairs. And I was very fortunate to also receive an opportunity to be an intern at the City of Plano in their budget department, which eventually evolved being offered a management assistant position for the City of Plano, where I was in their management development program. And that's where you basically were rotating through 4 major departments in the city over a 3 to 4 year period. You'd spend 9 months like in the city manager's suite, then you'd go and spend another 2 or 3 weeks in another department like finance or public works. One day you may be working on a financial policy. The next day you may be on a street putting in a concrete street. I mean, you had a full gamut of exposure to public service. And that's what the program was all about, preparing young people for a career in public service. I spent 3 or 4 years in Plano. Then I was offered my first city administrator's job in Springtown, Texas. I spent 1.5 years in Springtown, Texas. It was a great job. I enjoyed the people in Springtown. Then I received a call from a friend at the City of Plano, Felix Marquez. And he said, Scott, you need to apply for this new town administrator job in Fairview, Texas. I applied for the job. I was very fortunate to get it. I spent the next 4 to 5 years in Fairview. During that time in Fairview, I wasn't making a lot of money. I look back at it now, they really got a bargain. Because we put a lot of pieces in place in Fairview. And there was a part-time job that came open in Palmer, Texas at that time. And I asked the mayor and council if I could go ahead and apply for that job, plus also work for Fairview. And they didn't have a problem with it, because obviously I had a young family and I needed to make some more money. I was able to get the part-time job, so I spent the next 2-3 years going between Fairview and Palmer. Then eventually I was offered the job for the city administrator's job in Salina, Texas. And then 4 or 5 years in Salina, Texas. I spent, it was probably, I think it was 2005, right around 2005, where I was diagnosed with kidney cancer. I had a partial nephrectomy. When I came back from work the next 6 months, I felt like it needed to change. My family and I talked about it. It would be better for us, to slow down in life a little bit and look at something a little bit different. So I moved on. I did some consulting work with economist.com, impact fee rates studies, utility rate studies. Did that for roughly about 2 years, and then that's when I received a call from another friend about going overseas and betting with the Marines in Fallujah. Initially as a public finance advisor. I spent the next 4 or 5 years working on multiple different projects between Iraq and Afghanistan, whether it was utility projects, whether it was building projects, whether it was budget and capacity building. I did a little bit of everything. And at the end of that 5th year, I was ready to come home. It was time to come home. And I knew if I was going to get back into local government, I wasn't getting any younger. It was going to be an uphill battle. Came home, I was very fortunate to get a job at the River Bend Water Resource District for 2 years, and then I received a call to apply for the city manager's job in Angleton, Texas. And then I went and worked in Angleton, Texas for 3 years, then Hondo, and then Gatesville, and here I am today. That's a quick snapshot.
Yeah.
There's a lot in all that.
Well, it sounds like you're not afraid to take on new challenges.
Right, yes, sir. That's right.
One thing I guess to maybe highlight is that when we were talking with you, looking back on the Fairview experience, perhaps maybe that would have been a good place to stick with, but you were looking to help your family and to move on, and that was part of what motivated you, but maybe that would have been if you can go back and the whole string theory thing.
If there was.
If, right?
Yeah, if there was one major flaw in my career that I made, that was leaving Fairview, absolutely. Chasing money.
Right.
Because Palmer did offer me a substantial amount of money to leave Fairview at one point. They offered me a first six-figure salary, which was pretty enticing at the time for me and my family.
Right.
So I left.
Yeah. But I guess, like I told you when we were interviewing you, I certainly
Right.
understand that because I've personally had a lot of different roles in my career, and I think it's helped round my experience level, and I think that's what it sounds like it's done with you. You've experienced a lot of different situations where you've had some councils that were in line with where you're at, maybe some councils that weren't as well. How do you, since you've been through those types of situations, how do you navigate those waters where you align or don't align so much with the council?
You know, probably one of the better councils I ever worked with was the town of Fairview. They had a very clear vision, and it makes the job a lot easier for staff, to be quite honest with you. If we don't align, it doesn't align if you're wanting me to make decisions that are not ethically or legally right. We gotta understand, we have laws that you're creating here. And if you're gonna have laws, you need to follow those laws or change one or the other. Now, I'm not naive to think that there isn't some flexibility. I know that, it's not always so black and white. But when it impacts the property owner in the decisions you make, that's where, I may have a difference. I'll put the facts in front of council, you make the decision, but I'm always gonna be looking out for what's in the best interest of the entire community, not a select group of people or an individual. It's always what's in the best interest of the community.
So Robert and I have had plenty of time to visit with you.
Yeah, I wanted to
Okay.
kind of lead in with a couple things that I thought were key, but
JT,
certainly
Justin,
JT and Justin, let you
Yeah.
guys have time. And
So, your last place you were at the last time was Gatesville, right?
Yes, sir.
So you were at there for about a year? is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct? And you resigned after a year?
Yes.
Okay, what was the reasoning for that?
Probably just wasn't the best fit. I gotta be careful what I get into because there's a mutual agreement between me and myself and the city.
Okay.
An NDA, pardon me, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You have an NDA with him?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I'll talk about it in general terms.
Okay.
So when you have several $1 million sitting in a financial institution earning 0.5%, when you know you could go be earning more, whether it's tax pool or another investment pool, you've got to address that because that's a significant amount of money. And anywhere from $7 to $8 million. That needs to change. If there are zoning issues that are impacting the community as a whole, you need to address those issues too. You can't just pull a definition out and interpret it in a different way for someone else. You have to be uniform across the board, no matter who it is. If you start building a building without getting a building permit, and you start addressing that, you gotta treat everyone on the same playing field.
Okay.
And sometimes, communities can have a difficult time with changing.
Right. I guess maybe there's one, we didn't preface this like we talked about earlier. And obviously, if you have an NDA, you can't talk about some of these things for sure, I get that. If there are other items beyond this item, because this is probably covered by the NDA, if there are other items that you would like to be able to talk about in an executive session with us, we could do that. We wanted to make sure that this part of it was on an open forum, so that if anybody, has a
Right.
reason why we would be selecting you, they'd understand, but
Right.
I just gotta throw that out there.
So he's going with us to the executive session?
We could.
You
I don't
could,
think we, I
but
don't
there's
think
no
we.
one here,
I don't-
so we're pretty free. to-
Yeah, well, I mean, we are.
It is being recorded.
It is being recorded,
Yeah.
but I guess, yes, it is being recorded, that's the main point. I wanna make sure, because we talked to our attorney about this, is that we could certainly If there are some items that you need to talk to us in the executive session, that's fine.
Okay.
I think in general, we would like to have the executive session just between the council members, but if there needs to be like in the first portion of that meeting, you know,
Mhm.
if there's some things that you'd like to do that's fine. Obviously, this is covered by NDA, so it doesn't, regardless of executive session or not, you can't talk about those
All right.
items.
I think Katie called and told you about that format that we were
Yes,
using
she did.
tonight.
Yes, she did.
And I had told her, and me and Robert talked to her before today, so, we clarified that, so go ahead, JT. Or-
Well, I got a follow-up question for that, for Gatesville, so, yeah, I don't know, you know, where the line is, where you can talk about or not, so, looking for the budget, I think it was 23 to 24, an increase from 16 million to 33 million, can you explain the reason behind that?
They were not including their capital improvement budget in there. So we had multiple projects that were ongoing. Wastewater treatment plant improvement, which was right around 14 million. Road improvements, right around 2 million. Multiple capital improvement projects that were never incorporated in the entire budget. So when they were presenting a budget, you were only seeing the O&M budget, you weren't seeing the capital budget on top of that.
So that's something you brought up,
Yes,
brought to their attention?
we did it the first year I was there.
Okay.
Yeah, we included it, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just maybe a misunderstanding of, that it's not just the O&M, it's also other items. that-
They talked about it, I don't know why they never, you know, combined it. And I know that threw up some red flags, but
Right.
it's your budget, you have the funds for it, grant monies, bonds, you're spending the money. There has to be accountability to the public, so you have O&M, you have capital budget, and show both.
So, very clear that your resume is very versed in this position, or in these types of positions. If you had to exclude any kind of confounds to include the law, what is one thing that you would change or improve with a city or a municipality like ourselves or a town, general law type A?
If there was anything I would want to.
If there was no constraints.
Oh, jeez.
For type A city, is that
Yeah,
correct?
for type-
Correct.
Yeah, the constraints that we have on us,
Mhm.
yeah. Just say like you were the state legislator for a day, and you could make all the changes you wanted, yeah.
That's a good question. They have taken away a lot of control from municipalities over the years, and I've gradually watched that. The whole annexation has been watered down. We've known that for a long time. I'd probably have to say at this point, the ETJ issue. You know, if you could go back and, because now you have an option to annex out of the city's ETJ. And, you know, that's how a lot of good planning took place.
Mhm.
You know, when I was in Salina, even Fairview, you know, Salina covers 90 square miles, 99 square miles. A lot of Salina had holes all over. You know, we knew where this box was and we had boundaries, but there were a lot of holes. So how do you plan for 99 square miles? You know you're gonna have a lot of significant growth if you don't know that's gonna be inside your city or not. And so we ended up laying out the infrastructure, thoroughfares, water and sewer that covered 99 square miles for a build-out population of over 300,000. So for me, I think that's very important, just for the planning phase. And if a community doesn't know whether a portion of the ETJ is gonna be in their city anymore or not, how do you plan for it? How do you appropriately plan your thoroughfares, your water, your sewer, your public safety, your administration? How do you do that? You don't. You don't know what to expect.
You know, so this is like, you know, we're kind of branching out as a town into hiring a town administrator versus town secretary. You know, so with that, you know, comes typically higher salary. So I don't know how much you've like looked into our budget as a town. or kind of our situation or kind of challenges that we deal with. But what would what's your plan for reducing expenditures, kind of making us run more efficiently to justify a higher salary?
I have looked at your budget, and you're always hesitant to say anything because you're not here. You're not here on the ground to really know what's going on. I think you're right around $900,000 is your budget. The first thing you're going to look at, obviously, would be your permit fees, your building inspection fees. How are you collecting them? Are you even breaking even? Those are the type of things I start looking at. Those are simple, it's low-hanging fruit, to be honest with you. Depending upon who your contractor is, whether it's an independent building official or someone like Borough Veritas, typically you know what their fee structure is, and most cities who hire Borough Veritas for plan reviews and inspections, I typically add 5 to 10% on top of that for the administrative. Those are the type of avenues I would be looking at. What can we do? Are we subsidizing services that we should not be? Does that make sense? And that we probably need to reevaluate.
Yeah.
But I can't tell that by just looking at the budget.
I mean, to kind of tag on to that, the experience you have and the knowledge that you have potentially could help us in the realm of not having to spend as much maybe on attorney's fees. If you can help us refine things before it goes to an attorney I think that's where I'm hopeful. Maybe I don't want to lead the witness or put words in your mouth, but that's where I'm hoping that because not only because you've been in the industry for as long as you have, but because you've seen varied situations, that would be helpful. But I guess it's more of a commentary than it is a question. Sorry.
That kind of goes along with it. So specifically attorney fees, would you have any kind of experience there that would help us in reducing that? Maybe reducing the amount of time, like kind of specific steps that you would take, maybe using paralegal, any kind of things you've worked in with the past that's kind of like reduced attorney fees.
I saw your attorney budget. It's right around 20,000, I believe, 15 or 20,000.
And we're over this year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Right. Obviously, if we're going to draft a lot of the ordinances in-house and use the attorney as someone just like you mentioned to review them, I think that's a given. I don't think that's a major struggle for us. Instead of asking your attorney to go and draft something from scratch, there's multiple examples of different ordinances around here. As long as we have a clear understanding of what the city or town is trying to accomplish, and before we can draft that ordinance, we can put together a boilerplate ordinance that we feel comfortable with as a group. And once we understand it as a group, then we send it either to Mr. Dillard or a paralegal to review it. But I would assume it'd be Mr. Dillard.
What's your experience with working with paralegals directly?
I've mainly worked with the attorneys, but
Okay.
yeah.
So let me ask you a question. So it's been mentioned in the past councils, this one, whatever, that when you have a small town that was starting from nothing up to this point, a lot of times we reach out and we grab from the city of Plano, or roads and thoroughfare, or we might grab an ordinance section for, say, fences from Wiley, or whatever it may be. When you're a small town and you're trying to create, which over the years, I wouldn't say they've been real successful, but at the same time, what's your opinion on using that as a basis, as a starting point versus starting from scratch on an ordinance?
I think reaching out to your neighbors is probably the wisest thing to do. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Find a basis to start with an ordinance with those who are surrounding you around the St. Paul, and you can go further out. I mean, there's plenty of examples out there. If we start with a clear understanding of what we're trying to accomplish with that specific ordinance, then just find some ordinances around the area that you can take and piece together an ordinance that we feel like would fit the best interest of the community.
How's your experience been dealing with planning and zoning? We've got a gap in training for P&Z members, not being as effective. Council gets things that we shouldn't get yet because they got through P&Z and they shouldn't have. How do you see your role helping?
Is it because they didn't make a final report recommendation to you, or was it an incomplete?
Things incomplete.
Okay.
Things that we get that we shouldn't have gotten, it should have already been kicked back to the applicant to fix before it ever gets to us.
Well, I mean, then it shouldn't have come before you. I mean, I've worked with P&Z just about everywhere I've been, Fairview, all the way up.
You feel qualified to be able to lead a P&Z group?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's probably one of my strengths.
And what are your thoughts on having the attorney in the council meeting? You know, while they provide good advice, it's a kind of a cost issue, right? So, especially for longer meetings. So what's your experience with having the attorney in the meeting?
It's been a mix. I've had attorneys at every meeting. In Gatesville, we implemented virtual meetings. So, you know, if we wanted the attorney there, instead of them having to drive, we ended up having a virtual meeting. And I prefer that, to be honest with you, not just because of our attorneys, but whether it's other consultants or whether it's meetings with builders, it's just a lot more convenient, and everyone else tends to find it more convenient as well also. Not just for council meetings, but for staff. You know, just the meetings we have on a regular basis, virtual seems to be more good. So, I mean, if you want to have an attorney here, I'm used to having an attorney here during council meetings, but I would think that would be a costly venture for
And virtual would be something we'd have to explore. We haven't
Yeah.
really got, even with COVID, we didn't get to that realm. So, to piggyback on that, I mean, what about, I think we talked when we interviewed with you about the line for town administrator versus council, when the council is deliberating, where you fit in with that. So if you could just talk to that, where that boundary is.
As far as the town administrator and council.
Their role with the council during deliberation type situations.
My role is to provide recommendations. And then as you're deliberating on it, if questions come up, it's my role to answer those and provide my best recommendation based upon my experience and what I've learned from others. And then present that to council. You debate it. If questions come up, I need to be able to address those questions and then address them. You know, and if I don't have answers, I'll tell you until y'all come back with you. But for the most part, I will prepare you before you can get to that council meeting. I'll send you council agendas. You know, I recommend that you call me, email me, whatever is easier for you. You know, I answer my phone 24/7. And if you have questions about whether it's an ordinance or anything else, you're more than welcome to call me anytime. I've always been that way.
Okay.
What's your, you know, in this position, what would be your plan for kind of delegation versus doing things yourself? You know, we don't have a lot of staff, so it's like if a person's not available to do something, to fill like a public information request or something like that, are you willing to kind of dive in and get your hands dirty and take care of those types of things?
I pretty much already made up my mind. That's going to have to happen here.
Okay.
You know, I think that's part of what makes this job interesting too. You know, I've been doing this for 20-some years now. And one thing I loved about Fairview when I went there, so Fairview wasn't Fairview when I started. Fairview was just that little building up there off of State Highway 5 where the elevated water tower is, and that's where I worked out. My hands were in on everything. This is no different. We had a couple more employees than what you have right now, but we started from scratch. And then if we ever got to a point, well, let me give you an example. So 500 acres east, I think it was 500 acres east of Fairview was in our ETJ. Country Club Road, you know how it kind of winds around. I don't know if you know that area very well. You know where Heritage Ranch is. That whole area was in the ETJ. And Collin County, before the outer loop was pushed further out towards, I think it's Melissa now, around that area, they had a plan for it to come through Fairview down Stacy Road. And everyone was concerned because of 500 acres. They thought we need to get that 500 acres into the town. So hopefully we could prevent the loop from coming through Fairview. So they asked the mayor and I to go meet with the property owner, sit down and talk about what they had planned for that 500 acres. And we took about 3 plans to the property owner that we thought the town would like to see at the time. A dude ranch, a park conservation plan, and a retirement community. And Carl Thompson was the property owner. Within about 6 months, after that meeting with Mr. Thompson, we were sitting down with US Homes, and we were negotiating a deal to develop Heritage Ranch, but we're starting from the very basis where I reached out to the city of Allen. I asked Allen for a copy of their plan development ordinance. I think it's Twin Creeks. And we used that Twin Creeks PD to start drafting our PD, our plan development ordinance for Heritage Ranch. After we had a draft that we were comfortable with, then I brought the professionals in. We hired Sherry Sefco, used to be with Duncan Sefco, to review it and tighten it up a little bit better. So that's when you're finding the right time to call in the right consultants and experts to help you move that step a lot further. And that was such a large project that eventually you wanted people with had more experience than you did. But I carried that from the ground. I mean, literally sitting down, talking to Mr. Thompson, coming up with an idea, negotiating with US Homes, bringing the consultants in, engineers, planners, to where it is today, Heritage Ranch. Same thing with the commercial development area along US 75. An entire 1,000 acres along US 75 is not in the city. There's a little strip annexation around it. But what was happening is that there were several mom and pop operations that were popping up. Temporary concrete batch plant, billboards were being constructed, and a lot of the residents didn't care for that. If they could have built a wall around Fairview and stopped development, they would have. But they knew that wasn't realistic. So we had to start putting together a plan of how were we going to develop this land if we had that opportunity. And we ended up hiring Dr. Wyman at the University of Texas at Arlington, who was over the Arlington Urban Planning Department. And he brought his graduate students in, and we started with a very basic concept plan, almost like a cartoon of what we wanted the commercial area to look like. And once we had a concept plan that we could share with the community, and they participated in putting that concept plan together, we started seeking buy-in for the community. And once we had significant buy-in for the community, then we brought in the consultants like the Mason Design Group, Half Associates, to help us tighten that up a little bit. So a lot of what you see in the Fairview Commercial District, I wasn't there when they negotiated the development agreements. I was there when we put the planning in place for it.
I've spent some time in there with you, just showing you a rough map of St. Paul and how
Right.
we like to say screwed up it is out here, right?
Right.
So, but everybody loves it here. So the question is, just looking at the overview, the overlap between properties that are both county and city, the core being on one side, pure county being on the other, surrounded with ETJ. What do you see in your experience being able to help do, resolve, or change for the better for the public here? Just in that little bitty 1 square mile area that you see.
I would want to make certain we have a clear understanding of what that vision looks like first. I mean, what Fairview wanted versus what St. Paul wants could be completely different. And I want a clear understanding of what that is. Because I wouldn't want to run too far down the road,
Right.
starting different processes that she probably would not want to see, because then we're wasting a lot of time. You know, I've heard that St. Paul wants to remain rural. Well, that's similar to Fairview, keeping it country. But Fairview faced different challenges than what you're facing, especially with where they were located. And they had to make some decisions that, quite honestly, they just weren't the direction they probably wanted to go. You know, they probably weren't expecting a huge commercial district along US 75, even though they had 1,000 acres. They would have liked to probably have seen that a little bit different. They definitely weren't thinking about a heritage ranch when it started there. But there was motivation to do something different there. And they knew if they wanted to block the possibility of the outer loop coming through, they needed to be a little more aggressive in developing that area. But I want to know clearly, what does St. Paul want? That's what makes this job interesting to me, though, quite honest with you. It's a small community. What a great legacy project. You put a foundation in place, just like Fairview. I look at Fairview today, and I'm pretty happy with what we did. I mean, some people may not agree with it, But we started with nothing. We started literally with nothing. And I can still remember. I can still remember it as clear as today. I'm working long hours in that little office and pushing the community ahead. And I hope to do that here too. And the direction the community wants to go. But Fairview did have a very clear vision of what they wanted. And they had to amend that vision on occasion in order to accomplish what they wanted ultimately as well.
Did they accomplish it?
You know, to be honest with you, JT, so if you go back and look at the Fairview website, I think it's still up there. I looked under the planning. They used to have, they may still, they have all the different steps we took in planning that commercial district, going all the way back to the concept plan. The only thing in that concept plan I can think of that we had on there when we started it was at Whole Foods, and it's exactly where they wanted it. We knew we would have a town hall there eventually. The town hall they built surprises me. You know, all the other commercial development, I'm not certain if it met their expectations, but I know the town of Fairview and the leadership in that community, they probably managed that very tightly. Now what, if it ended up with what they were expecting, I can't answer that because I wasn't there. The Ridgeview overpass we're working on right now. We were talking about redoing the Ridgeview overpass. The 121 interchange that was built several years ago, we were working on the 121 interchange. They knew they were going to have to embrace some sort of development just because of where they were located. But what kind of control they were going to have, we tried to put the best tools in place for them to manage that. And whether we accomplished that or not, I'd have to go back and ask those council members at that time. I think we accomplished it from a financial standpoint because we knew we wanted to keep the property taxes low in Fairview. And in order to do that, you're going to have to have a strong commercial base. And that's why they also pushed putting together the Fairview Village along with the Allen Village. So.
So you know our budget.
Yes, sir.
You know our population, you know our footprint, 1.4 square miles.
Right.
Knowing that St. Paul is, what, I don't remember the exact figure, 95+% developed, where do you see we as St. Paul, the town, in the next 5 years? What can we do to improve for the next 5 years, a 5-year plan?
Have a clear vision, because you will redevelop. You have areas around you. If I'm looking at that map, what I saw today, you will have redevelopment that you're gonna have to consider somewhere down the road.
I'll even interject and give you this information, right? So we've got Parker Road.
Right.
That's our most
Right.
prominent project that's coming through. The expansion of Parker Road, of a roadway. Beyond that, what do you see as we should be preparing for?
Redevelopment. I would assume you have areas in St. Paul, at least that are older areas. You know, that property, they may be sitting on 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 acres that may come available, may be developed someday, whether it's with one home, whether it's, you know, estate lot homes. Those are the things you need to think about. A comprehensive plan, what does that comprehensive plan look for the community? How do you sustain the type of life that you are living, that you want here? You know, what is it gonna take to sustain the quality of life that you're wanting, what you're enjoying now and what you wanna enjoy in the future? And what do we need to put in place in order to do that? To continue the success of St. Paul, what do we need to do? And I don't know what that looks like yet, but those are the pieces that we would put in place. You know, it's almost, this could be such a well-oiled machine because it is so small. It should run, quite honestly, pretty easy. But we've got to start with a vision of putting the pieces in place to make certain, hopefully 5 years from now, if I'm here, and we're having the same conversation, it's doing that. And I'm difficult, I don't wanna offend anybody either, so I'm trying to be careful with this. But I think that's what would be, you know, success 5 years from now, and I think that's doable. You know, spoke with Katie, the headhunter, a couple times, and she said, you know, everybody wants to keep it rural and country. Well, okay, that's great, but tell me, what is that? What does that look like to you? And that will help me move to the next step in putting the policies and procedures in place that will make you successful, not just for 1, 2, or 3 years, but 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
So I see like kind of one issue I've seen around here is turning residential property to SUP property, and typically places of worship. Do you have any experience dealing with those types of
Yes.
situations?
It's different, a conditional use permit. I'll give you another example that's right down the road from me at Fairview. So that, the 7-Eleven that's at the corner of Stacy and Highway 5, right there.
Yep.
That's a conditional use permit. We put that together when I was there. An East Wawa who had a little gas station in Allen at the time purchased that corner, and he went and put in a gas station. And between P&Z and myself, and eventually council, we drafted a conditional use permit that pretty much laid out everything you see there. The parapets, you know, how it's all, it was very specific. And, yeah, so I have experience with conditional use, but I'm familiar with special use permits as well.
Okay, I guess like diving into it more. So, you know, for example, we've got a residential property. They're worried about, you know, say a place of worship, dumping a lot of water on them. But then, you know, our government protects places of worship quite a bit. So, how do you manage that? How do you, you know, keep the town from getting sued? You know, from either denying or making, you know, kind of levying more requirements on the SUP holder versus not drowning the neighbors. Like, kind of how do you deal with those types of situations?
So you're talking specifically about a drainage issue and putting additional water.
Yeah.
So if I have a development that's coming in and they're gonna be putting down more concrete, it's gonna be obviously covering more of the area. You obviously have engineering requirements, drainage studies, may require a retention pond. They prepare it, you have your engineer review it, and you make certain that you're not releasing any additional water off that property that wasn't being released already. And the work and the time that goes into that to have our engineers review it, the developer pays for it.
Okay.
Okay. And that's one of those opportunities I would be looking for that. You know, when you're doing plats, you may have a plat fee, but anything that's associated with that plat, engineering, planning, the applicant needs to pay for it, because they're the ones benefiting from it. You shouldn't be subsidizing it. And there's a lot of little communities around here that do that, where they require, well, Weston's a little bit different because there's a lot going on out there. But there's a lot of little communities that require developers, I'm not talking about a single individual, to put up a substantial amount of money up front to cover their costs for third-party services, whether it's, you know, attorneys, whether it's engineers, whether it's planners, they pay for it.
We don't have that schedule. Are you comfortable creating?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So I guess pushing back on that, so in this semi-hypothetical scenario, so you go back to the place of worship, they're trying to get SUP, you tell them, no, you gotta satisfy these drainage requirements. They say, no, we don't, we got the First Amendment, we're gonna come after you and sue you. What do you do? What's your next move?
Call Rob. I mean, just to be honest with you, I mean, and then I'm gonna brief council on it. What do you wanna do? You know, my job is, you should have engineering regulations in your code, in your subdivision regs, and everyone should have to follow those. And you shouldn't be constructing a facility that's gonna force more water onto another property owner. That's not very neighborly. No one should do that.
Right.
And if we had the appropriate regulations in place requiring them to file the appropriate documents for us to review to make certain they're not doing that, then they should file them. And we should have an engineer review them and make certain they're not increasing the flow of water onto the lot. If they develop a retention pond, which you'll find several of those in Fairview as well, then you gotta think about, what are you gonna do to maintain that retention pond when they're not maintaining it over the next 10 years? That's something else you need to work through. So there's a lot of different logistics that you need to work through.
Is that a zero impact development? Is that the term used for that? So if I'm building something new and I don't want to increase the drainage to my neighbors, is that called zero impact development? Is there? I think there's like a specific term for that.
Could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Depends on what you're saying, zero impact development, that could be a lot of things.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
it could be a lot.
Okay.
Uh,
All right.
I think one of the bigger issues you're probably facing right now also is just street work. You know, how are you gonna take care of the streets in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Yeah.
You know.
So the other item to cover is, I think that DC Consultants probably made it clear, and we may have touched on it somewhat with the previous interviews, but the role would need to be able to cover the town secretary role that's called out in the state municipal code. Just make sure that you're aware of that.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
It's the first thing we covered when she called me the first time.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Just want to make sure we said that publicly.
Yes, sir.
No issues with that.
No, sir.
Leanne, do you have any questions?
You have questions you'd like to ask?
He's answered quite a few, things that, the fees,
Mhm.
Yeah.
specifically the fees.
Right.
That's a big burning thing for me because it's pretty detailed
Mhm.
in what you need to do, and that's been a big issue for me because we're working on a fee schedule that's like 5 years old.
Mhm.
And we just recently gotten the examples
Mhm.
of what fees are with platting and that sort of thing. Just the last 2 years, there's
Right.
been more platting. You might have one plat a year where,
Right.
you know, now have 3 or 5
Right.
special things, but the fees and who's responsible for those fees, but understanding that you need to collect an amount ahead of time.
Right.
But you have to be able to prove to those people what those fees are.
Well, what we
but
took-
the background of those fees.
Yeah, well, we give them copies of all the invoices. And let's say you collect, I'm just throwing something, $10,000 in. Cities will collect a lot more than that. They'll collect 20, 25,000. That's what I've done in other cities up front. And you go through that pretty quick if you're dealing with a major development. But when you're done, then you provide them a copy of all the invoices, and if there's money's left over, you give it back to them.
How would you, so the division here is you've got the big developers versus the guy that just wants to plat his lot.
Right.
Proving to them, you know, the developers, they look at things like, yeah, I know I'm gonna have to pay that, it's,
Right.
you know, they're not. But my understanding is there has to be some kind of documentation that still, they have some understanding
Of what it's gonna cost.
What it's gonna cost them.
Right.
Cause it's kinda like writing a blank check. And,
Right.
you know, I've been lucky and we get around at the clerk's office
Yeah.
that, you know, it's like, I got it
Yeah.
recorded in the first
Yeah.
try, you know, understanding what goes on the plat stuff, but you get those things where you get to the courthouse and, you know, development services kicks it out, you got another trip to the courthouse, you know, all the different
Really?
trips. Yeah, I've had one that I had to go back 3 times on, so you incur the trip charges and things like that because of their mistake. It's not something that, you know, I can catch a lot of the things ahead of time, but
Right.
this particular one, it was just, there was no catching the things that they were looking for. It was a learning experience, but I'm just saying the fees add
Okay.
up for different reasons.
So are they reviewing just the plat, or are they reviewing engineering plans along with it, or?
No, just the plat.
Okay.
There was just some.
There should be very,
intricacies.
very, very basic boilerplate language that they require on the plat. Everything should be very clear. You should be able to hand that to anyone who walks through the front door. Say, this is what, they should know what they need to do on the plat.
And I do have
Right,
a
right.
sheet, but it's like.
Then that's a conversation I'd probably be having with the county. And say, what do we need to do to improve our communication with our builders and developers? Yeah. That shouldn't be too difficult to do.
I mean, that was just an example, that was
Yeah.
the one that I had a problem with, the rest, you know, got a checklist, pretty much know what's supposed to be
Yeah.
on there.
And the individual homeowner or builder, if he has to plat, you could come up, you're gonna know, you know, your engineer, was it KSA?
Mhm.
And I'm gonna assume, do they review your plats?
Mhm.
Okay. I'd ask your engineer, you know, give me a boilerplate number for a very simple residential lot, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 lots, that I can at least communicate to a property owner or builder what it's going to cost for them to review it and use that as a starting basis. I would want to be working out where that hiccup is with the county pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because,
It's learning.
you know, small plats, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 lots, they should be routine, especially in Collin County, just pretty quick. So it's something we would have to work
What about opt-out, ETJ opt-out? Are you familiar with that new?
with. Oh, yeah. I think I mentioned that earlier.
Right.
That's just one of the things we're doing.
Mhm.
And I think I mentioned, I think it's JT asked that question. If there's one thing that changed, that's probably it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's a lot of things that would change, but, you know, when you start to lose the ability to manage the property that's in these little donut holes in your community, how do you plan for them? Because they're all going through the county, and then you're gonna have to open up those lines of communications, find out what's going on. Are you all gonna be on the same page? I think that will probably be challenged in the future though. By the cities, if TML steps up.
Another question, so, if, like how, I guess, have you, in the past, in your previous positions, communicated kind of your day-to-day activities to the council, and if so, how did you do that?
You know, I'm gonna have to get better at that, to be honest with you, Justin. Because I get so wrapped up in the day-to-day work. I put in a lot of time. That's just who I am. It's just my work ethic. But this is a smaller platform here. I'll probably send out weekend updates, just real quick bullets. This is what's going on. And if you want more detail, you're more than welcome to ask. But I'm gonna tell each and every one of you, if I'm selected, my door is always open to you. My phone, my email, text, whenever. And I've done it. Late at night, if there's something going on, I address it. You know, so I will send out a weekly update to you, bullet points. If there's a specific subject matter that you have more questions on, you're more than welcome to question me anytime.
Okay, sounds great.
I'll make time on the weekends, I do that all the time. In the evenings, I do that all the time. To meet with you individually.
Well, hopefully you can have your normal
Right.
personal life. We
Yeah.
definitely don't want you, doing that, so.
I would anticipate, if I'm fortunate enough to get the job the first year, there's gonna be a lot of time just learning what's going on and getting ramped up and building a rhythm. Focusing on building a rhythm with you and the community.
Please.
Your policies,
Oh,
so.
yeah, I did a while ago. I asked him about the procedures and policies. So, looking at a town, any town, we talked about that earlier, that you gotta have procedures and policies, which, in St. Paul is almost nil to none. So, can you, without a big staff, how do you handle the day-to-day, the platting, the planning, everything, and find the time to create those policies, those procedures, those guidelines, so that, again, you get a change in personnel, low end, up
Right.
end, can generate
You want
and produce.
You want the machine to keep moving.
That's correct.
And You know, you have to start with the obvious, you know, I would assume the finances being number one. You know, what's it gonna look like, not just today, but 5, 10, 15 years down the road. IT is gonna be the next, you know, anyone can step in here if they have very simple rules of how to start this, what the passwords are, banking, whoever your banking's with, the very basics. And that, you know, that would probably take a couple of months to pull that all together. But the basic operations shouldn't be that difficult to pull together as far as standard operating procedures. Hopefully that wouldn't be needed right away. But I would want an opportunity to come in and see how things are operating, to see if there's a different way we can change to where we're a little more efficient. I'm not saying it hasn't been, but just a little more efficient, that, you know, we're saving some taxpayer dollars. So I'm gonna be looking at that a lot, because you do have a very small budget. And there are obviously other things we're probably gonna wanna do as a community, that if we can make certain we're maximizing our taxpayer dollars in the best way, we're doing that. And I'd wanna know what those priorities are. So getting back to your procedures, yes, but where does it fit into whatever work schedule I start with? Those procedures, whether it's 2, 3, or 4 months down the road, I'd want an opportunity to see how we've been operating and what do we need to do to change before we start.
So, it's like I explained to you, I think, in the first interview and even in there earlier. So I look at my role as a salesman. I gotta sell what you do, I gotta sell what these guys do. That's what I do every day. So the question is, with a budget of our size and a person of your caliber, you look at the percentage of our budget, your salary or 2 extra employees would be. Looking down the road, where do you think your ability and skill could reduce that expenditure? Not just of your salary, but overall, if for that percentage, to help me sell this to that public in that environment, if that makes sense. Would it be from not having to call an attorney as often, or knowing the insurance ahead of time, or?
Fee schedule, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the services that you're providing to individuals, whether it's platting, you know, the service fees, I don't mean this in a bad way, but we shouldn't be subsidizing. All the other taxpayers shouldn't be subsidizing one individual. That's where I would start. I mean, I don't know what you're using Rob for, so it's difficult for me to address. I would try to cut back on that. If it, you know, if it's just the ordinance writing, yeah, of course I can do that. I don't know what else you may be using Rob for. You know, the other avenue is you have the Texas, you are part of Texas Municipal League, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have legal advice through TML, that's free. You know, I would be tapping into that as well. So there's other avenues that you can track. So, does that help?
Yeah, it does. It does somewhat.
Thank you.
Questions? Continued?
What are some of your pastimes, your hobbies?
Right now, remodeling our house.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's see here, next week, my wife and I are taking our oldest grandson to the Texas Rangers game on July 4th, so we're looking forward to that. Spending more time with family. You know, I don't know if I shared this with y'all, but both my parents were very sick starting in February. My father passed away in April. Got a lot of things that I need to take care of with family at this point, to be quite honest. And that's a big driver for me. Big driver for wanting to be back in Collin County. You know, where I can spend more time with my family. I've been away from Collin County since 2008, and you know, the opportunity to come back and work here and see myself here for the next 10 years plus is very inviting. I don't have to chase anything. I'm gonna tell you, I don't have to chase another job. I don't have to. I'm happy with the very, you know, basic, putting the foundation in place for your community, and I know I'm more than capable of doing that. And I know St. Paul is a community that's in a transition. I know that. And that I wanna help you through that transition. I wanna be able to understand what you're trying to accomplish and what I need to do with my skills and ability and network to help you move in the direction you want. So I don't think I answered completely, but that's where we are right now. You know, our
Sound genuine.
Well, our neighbors were probably laughing at me this weekend because I got a new power washer. And we live in an older neighborhood. I like older neighborhoods with character. And we had these little stone columns that go along a bridge where there's a creek goes in it. No one's cleaned them for years out there, cleaning them, and then I'm going along the curb, you know. It's just one of those things that you just want to take pride, clean things up, and I find that rewarding, you know. That's it.
Obligations, do you have any obligations pressing in the next 4 to 6 months, outside of like this?
No, you know, I got a couple of doctor's appointments, you know, I got my annual physical, if those are the type of obligations you're talking about, but there's no,
Expect, you know, time off type of situations in the next. Is there-
just a dental appointment, but I mean, that's like.
Okay,
every day.
so not like long periods.
Yeah.
You're not going to around the world for 6
No.
weeks or anything?
Well, my wife and I have talked about a trip probably in September or October, maybe for a week, but we haven't firmed that up either.
One of your first things would be working on a budget. I assume your experience, you're comfortable with that?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Won't that be a snag?
No, not at all. Not at all. Matter of fact, I think I'll probably be diving into that so far down in the weeds. I'm gonna have a lot of questions. I don't know if I can still reach out to Leanne, and then council about what was spent on what. You know, we do need to identify a clear vision. We don't have the time to do that, to link the budget to it, but I think we need to talk about priorities. You know, what do those priorities look like for the upcoming year? Even though you have a small budget, you want to ensure you're spending those monies in the right places. So one of the first things I'd probably do is really dive into how those funds are being spent, and is there a better way we could be spending them? So when we sit down and we talk about priorities, I can at least give you the best understanding that I know of as far as financially where you are and where those funds could be spent.
Do you rely heavily on the CPA, or is, with your financial background, are you able to kind of supplement that? We're under the impression that we need CPA that's, you know, got a municipal background,
Yeah.
and that's an audit.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we've done that, but is that something that you feel necessary?
A CPA? I mean, if you're looking just for accounting support, I mean, you have QuickBooks, is my understanding. It shouldn't be that difficult to do. But there may be a division in duties, you know, town administrator doing the budget, you know, having access to accounting. It depends upon what comfort level you would be at.
And I think our
Yeah.
auditor, recommendation, if I remember, Robert, you remember the recommendation of those several years was we had to have a CPA for
Yeah.
making those adjustments and stuff at the end.
Yeah,
of
for
the year.
segregation of duties.
Yeah, well, the segregation of duties makes sense.
Right.
But did they have to be a CPA?
That was-
Not necessarily.
They were
Yeah.
saying they had to have yellow book experience,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
was,
Right.
Yeah.
that makes that an expense that
Yeah.
you have to have, so.
Yeah.
I'm just curious your thoughts on that, or what you see.
Well, I will tell you.
I don't know if that's a valid question, y'all can say.
Sure, yeah.
There are, well, I know cities who have financial staff, but they still contract out financial services to like, someone who helps them reconcile the budget. And that's when they have a full-blown finance staff. And
That's
that
a
was-
huge budget, right, we're talking. No?
Well, I'm tiptoeing around a few things here. That's one of the issues I've had, where I know you have 3 or 4 people in the finance department, that it doesn't take. If you can't manage that as a finance director, then you probably shouldn't be in that role. And it's not that difficult to manage a multi-million-dollar budget and make certain that you're paying your invoices and you're reconciling it on a monthly basis, if you have the right procedures in place. It could be you just have too much on your plate in other areas and you're not staying focused on your role as a finance director.
Because I don't see that our budget is that complicated.
It's not. I mean, when I saw it,
It's-
$900,000, it shouldn't be that difficult.
What's your experience with the QuickBooks?
I know of it, but I've never worked with it, but it can be that difficult to operate.
Is there one, a program, an accounting program that you?
Encode,
utilize?
I've
Encode?
used Encode everywhere I've been. You know, but QuickBooks,
That, dealing like with the county, working with the Collin County Appraisal District and, Assessor's Office.
Oh, yeah.
This time of year, working with them as far as getting the tax rates.
Oh, yeah.
All that information to feed for council to publish that budget, you're familiar with those.
done it for 27 years. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that
Well,
was, that was
okay.
uncomfortable for me at first, because I've never done it.
Yeah. So getting back to the finance question, I would want to see how you're operating and if there's a better way that we can be operating our finances and budget, I'm definitely gonna recommend that, especially if we're gonna save money. And obviously, if it's something that I can handle, if you're comfortable with me handling it, I'm gonna handle it. But I wanna make certain you're comfortable with segregation of duties too, and that's something I would ask your auditor. But it wouldn't, I mean, if I had to take that wouldn't bother me.
Or, any questions on that? No? Thank you very much for coming up. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Mr. Knight.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Do you have any questions for us? I know you've spoken to the other gentleman, but do you have questions for us?
I guess, what are your expectations for your next administrator, for your administrator? What are you expecting from them? Have you clearly defined what you're wanting out of them in the first 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, I think a lot of what you listed, you know, the maturity of being able to come in and know the inner ins and outs of running a municipality and being able to take the pulse of where we need to go. I think we do need to remain rural, but there's definitely a desire from the citizens that have been expressed for us to be able to enforce the ordinances that we have. So it's not gonna be so much of the good old boy, you know, club type situation. It should be more equal across the way that we, especially with businesses. You know, there probably still needs to be some grassroots for residential type situations, but businesses, you know, it needs to be more uniform how we apply things, and just a maturity in the areas that allow for us to still have the fortitude to be a town, but not so much that we're trying to become the next Fairview or Plano.
Right.
We're not really heading that direction. No, that's not our desire, from what I can tell.
You can,
Yeah.
any other questions from you?
I know there's been some talk about TMRS. Is that a direction that the town's wanting to go?
We can certainly entertain that, I
Okay.
think. from what
I know it's not gonna happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
But somewhere in the future.
Yeah.
It seemed fairly easy from
Yeah.
talking with the reps that it's not that difficult to get
Right.
set up on.
Right.
And we already do retirement type situation, so it's kind of a transition, really, from what I understand.
Okay.
Yep, I think so.
Okay. Those are the only questions I have.
Okay.
Well, yeah, at this point, yeah, I do appreciate it, and we'll be in touch. We're gonna move to executive session, talk and see what we can come up with. I think Katie, I talked to her even earlier today.
Yes.
And we will move forward, based on what we all decide here. You'll hear pretty soon.
Okay.
So we can give you, the courtesy that you deserve, that's for sure. And we do appreciate your time coming in. So, if you don't mind, please, I told Katie earlier, don't think it rude on our behalf. This is just, you've done a great job coming in here and filling everybody in today, and I wanna thank you for that. No audience makes it a little easier.
Right.
But at the same time, yeah, we'll go on to deliberate, and then
Okay.
This
we'll.
is not like normal council meetings.
No.
Like,
Okay.
Normally we have a pretty.
Packed house?
We have a couple.
Okay.
We have a couple.
Okay.
3:30 today, kinda caught them off guard. And so, but you'll be hearing from, either the hiring committee or me.
Okay.
Probably, Monday, Tuesday,
Okay.
over the weekend, something. I think we're gonna talk with her, maybe at the end of this evening, so we might even hear something then, so.
Okay.
We'll let you know, and I do appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Y'all take care.
You too.
Reconvening out of executive session. This is item number 3, discuss, consider, act on an offer for a Scott Albert, prospective candidate for town administrator. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to state first, before I make the motion, that the town hired DC Consultant to help us find someone that there's been feedback from the citizens that we wanted to make sure that we had the ability for the town to be effective and to be able to follow ordinances. So we wanted to make sure that we did a good search when Leanne let us know that she wanted to move away from the position and that we needed to find someone, and that we use these consultants to do a really good search. We had lots of candidates that were presented and vetted, but then we narrowed that down to 3 that we talked to, and that today we did a pretty good review and interview of Scott Albert. And so I'd like to motion at this time that we make an offer to Mr. Scott Albert as the town administrator / town secretary.
I'll second that motion.
We have a second. JT. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Negative. Motion passes. So, that being the last item, we are, do I have a motion for adjournment?
Make the motion that we adjourn.
I second.
Justin, in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.